The kingdoms Alexander's generals built lasted for centuries. Then, one by one, a single rising power swallowed every one of them. By 30 BC, not a single Hellenistic kingdom remained, and the republic that destroyed them had become the empire that replaced them all. At their height around 280 BC, the successor kingdoms ruled the richest, most cultured world the ancient Mediterranean had yet seen. Ptolemaic Egypt, the Seleucid Empire, Antigonid Macedonia. Three great Greek-ruled powers, each with armies, fleets, and wealth Alexander himself would have envied. But the fall did not begin with Rome. It began inside the kingdoms. Each was Greek and Macedonian rulers governing vast non-Greek populations, and each depended on a strong king at the top. Over generations, they produced weak kings, court intrigue, and dynastic wars that hollowed them out from within. While the Hellenistic kingdoms aged, a new power matured in the West. Rome had spent 2 centuries conquering Italy and breaking Carthage. By 200 BC, it was the strongest military state in the Mediterranean, disciplined, expansionist, and entirely outside the Greek world the successors understood. The tragedy is that they could not unite against the threat. The same rule that defined their rise now sealed their fall. They could not stop competing. Rome did not have to fight a Greek world. It fought 3 separate kingdoms, one at a time, and never faced them together. Macedonia fell first. Under King Philip V, it clashed with Rome in a series of wars. The decisive moment came at Cynoscephalae in 197 BC. The Macedonian phalanx, Alexander's own war machine, the formation that had conquered the world, met the Roman legion on broken ground. The phalanx lost. Cynoscephalae was a turning point in military history. The phalanx was devastating head-on, but rigid. It needed level ground and could not recover once its line broke. The legion fought in smaller units that could turn and exploit any gap. On uneven terrain, flexibility beat the wall of pikes. Rome did not annex Macedonia at once. At first, it preferred to dominate from a distance, defeating kings, extracting terms, withdrawing. But the Macedonians rose again under Philip's son Perseus. At Pydna in 168 BC, the legions destroyed the phalanx a second time, decisively. The Antigonid dynasty ended. After Pydna, Rome carved Macedonia into 4 powerless republics. When even that failed to keep order, it lost patience. In 146 BC, the same year it destroyed Carthage, Rome annexed Macedonia outright as a province. Alexander's homeland, the kingdom that had conquered the known world, became Roman territory. The Seleucid Empire, largest of the 3, fell apart more slowly and completely. At its peak, it stretched from the Aegean toward India, but it was too big and too dependent on holding everything at once. From its founding, it was shedding territory at the edges. The center could not hold the whole. In the east, a new people rose, the Parthians. Nomads from the steppe, they seized the Iranian plateau from the Seleucids, piece by piece. Through the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC, the Seleucid kings campaigned again and again to recover the east, and failed. By 140 BC, the heartland of Persia was Parthian. In the west, the Seleucids collided with Rome. King Antiochus III, called the Great, rebuilt much of the empire and marched into Greece. Rome answered. At Magnesia in 190 BC, a Roman army shattered his forces. The terms that followed stripped the Seleucids of Anatolia and reduced them to a regional power. The Seleucids never recovered. Squeezed between Parthia and Rome, drained by dynastic wars in which brother killed brother for a shrinking throne, the empire crumbled inward. By the 1st century BC, it held little more than parts of Syria. A great power had been reduced to a city-state. There was a famous revolt along the way. In Judea, the Seleucid king Antiochus IV tried to suppress Jewish religious practice. The result was the Maccabean revolt of the 160s BC, a successful rebellion that created an independent Jewish state and is still commemorated today in the festival of Hanukkah. The end came quietly. In 63 BC, the Roman general Pompey, reorganizing the east, simply abolished what was left of the empire and made Syria a province. There was no great final battle. The empire Seleucus had founded with 500 war elephants, ended with the stroke of an administrator's pen. Only one kingdom remained, Ptolemaic Egypt. It survived the longest, nearly 3 centuries, for the same reasons it had always been the most stable. Egypt was rich, defensible, and unified by the Nile. While Macedonia and the Seleucids tore themselves apart, the Ptolemies held on even as they too declined. But Ptolemaic Egypt was no longer truly independent. By the 2nd century BC, it survived largely because Rome allowed it to a wealthy client, useful for its grain and treasure. The later Ptolemies ruled at Rome's sufferance, their throne propped up or knocked down as Roman interests required. The dynasty also devoured itself. The later Ptolemies practiced sibling marriage and murderous court politics on a vast scale. Brothers married sisters, then killed them. Children were used as pawns and disposed of. By the last great Ptolemy, the dynasty had been poisoning its own bloodline for 2 centuries. That last great ruler was Cleopatra VII. Roman propaganda remembers her as a seductress, but she was far more dangerous to Rome, intelligent, politically gifted, and determined to keep Egypt independent by any means. She was the last Hellenistic monarch with a real strategy. Cleopatra understood the only way to save Egypt was to attach it to Roman power rather than resist it. She allied with Julius Caesar, and after his murder with Mark Antony, not merely as lovers, but as a strategy to keep Egypt independent by binding it to the strongest men in Rome. For a time it worked. But Rome was tearing itself apart in civil war, and Egypt was dragged in. Antony and Cleopatra against Octavian, Caesar's heir, for control of the Roman world. The decisive clash came at sea, at Actium in 31 BC. Octavian's fleet defeated theirs. Antony and Cleopatra fled to Egypt with the war already lost. Octavian followed them to Egypt. Antony took his own life. Cleopatra, refusing to be paraded through Rome as a trophy, did the same, according to legend, by the bite of an asp. With her death in 30 BC, the last Hellenistic kingdom fell. The dynasty Ptolemy had founded 3 centuries earlier ended with her. Egypt became a Roman province, and a special one. Octavian, soon called Augustus, made it his personal possession, ruled directly by him rather than the Senate. The grain of Egypt fed Rome. The wealth of the Ptolemies funded the new empire. Alexander's last kingdom became the foundation of his successor's enemy. So why did the Hellenistic kingdoms fall? Not to one catastrophe, but to a pattern. Each was a Greek dynasty ruling foreign populations, dependent on strong kings and structurally unable to cooperate. Internally, they decayed through dynastic war. Externally, they faced a power that did not decay, Rome. Rome's advantage was not just military, it was structural. Rome had what the successor kingdoms never developed, a government that did not depend on the genius or survival of one man. Consuls came and went, the institution endured. Where the kingdoms rose and fell with their kings, Rome simply continued. This is the lesson running through the whole story of Alexander and his successors. Alexander built an empire that needed him, and it died with him. His generals built kingdoms that needed strong kings, and they died when the kings weakened. Rome built an institution that needed no single man, and outlasted them all. And yet the Hellenistic world did not truly vanish. Rome conquered it and was conquered by it culturally. Romans learned Greek, copied Greek art, absorbed Greek philosophy, and inherited Greek science. The civilization the Diadochi had spread did not die under Rome. It became the foundation of Rome's own culture. The Greek East never became fully Latin. Centuries later, when the Roman Empire split, its eastern half, ruled from Constantinople speaking Greek, would carry the Hellenistic inheritance for another 1,000 years. The world Alexander's generals built outlived Rome itself in the empire we now call Byzantine. That is the strange afterlife of the Diadochi. The kingdoms they founded all fell, the dynasties they built all ended. But the Greek civilization they spread proved more durable than any throne, outlasting the successors, outlasting Rome, reaching all the way to 1453 and the fall of Constantinople. Alexander's generals could not keep his empire, their heirs could not keep their kingdoms. Everything built on the strength of one ruler fell to a power built on something more lasting. The kingdoms died, the culture survived. Next, the deeper pattern beneath it all, why succession decides the fate of every empire.